I've put together some video clips from my past trips to Ethiopia to explain a little about the details and intricacies of processing in Ethiopia and how it differs from other countries. This footage is from Shakiso, but the pickers are actually from Sidama. They're brought in because there's a labor shortage. A lot of the locals are gold miners. The singing was pretty much for show for the group of visitors. Ethiopia, they not only produce a lot of coffee, and it's the birthplace of coffee, but they roast and drink a lot of coffee themselves in the traditional ceremony. When we say traditional and ceremony, you think it's rare, but this is actually, for many people, a daily occurrence. I'm going to make some comments about the natural coffees, and then we'll look at the wet processing after. But these are hand sorting of the coffee cherries. They're picked from the tree and go direct to the beds to dry to produce naturals. The problem with naturals is you don't have the assistance of any machines to help remove underripes or defective fruit. So everything has to be done by hand. In a sense, the fact that hand labor is cheap in Ethiopia is something that we all benefit from. Not everywhere can afford to produce naturals. Those were very fresh cherries from the day before, and here's coffee cherry from several days of drying, still quite wet. It's important to keep a very thin layer of fruit on the bed and to rotate it. But again, these pickers are doing this mainly for show. This wouldn't be their normal labor practice in rotating the coffee cherry. Here the cherries are quite dry and they're forming hard pods, and soon they'll be milled. Naturals are always milled in the local area before they're brought to Addis for export. Now this is the beginning of a wet process where they're doing some pre-sorting and cleaning of the coffee cherries that come in. And the underripes are going to be removed mechanically, more or less. This kind of pre-screening is a little bit rare in Ethiopia. This is a rather technified wet processing mill. This is the pulper, and this is called the kriba, which is a Latin American term for this drum, where the underripe coffee cherry cannot pass through the space within the metal bars and will stay in the interior to be separated. The pulped coffee is washed through to go to the fermentation tank. Pulped means the skin has been removed. And the skins of the coffee fruit are washed out separately. These are returned to the trees in the form of compost. In Ethiopia, there's two types of fermentation. There's dry fermentation, where they drain the water out of the concrete fermentation tank. This is called aerobic fermentation because more oxygen is allowed access to the coffee. But in some areas, coffee is fermented underwater, like the top of this fermentation tank. And you can even see the fermented coffee producing off-gassing. This is called anaerobic fermentation. After the coffee is fermented, which means that the fruity mucilage layer on the outside is broken down, it's agitated. They were agitating in the fermentation tank, which is rare. Most of this happens in the grading channel. The wooden rakes help to loosen any of the residual mucilage, the sticky fruity layer from the outside of the coffee. But the washing channel also separates heavy coffee from light coffee, since the light coffee floats down the channel first. The dense coffee is pushed against the current back up to the top of the washing channel. Dense coffee will be separated into a different fermentation tank, destined for higher quality lots. whereas the light coffee will go into commercial blends. The coffee is then taken out for the start of the sun drying process on raised beds. Initially it's skin drying, and later as the coffee approaches 10 to 11%, which is the final stage for warehousing it, it's hand-picked pretty much continuously during that time. When the coffee's fully dried, it's bulked up into bags and stored in the warehouse. This resting time is important for it to reach moisture stability and equalization and physical stability. Then the coffee is ready to transport to Addis Ababa to the dry mill. In the dry mills, if it's a wet processed coffee, the parchment skin's removed and it's sorted for color and density and size. And most importantly, it's hand sorted at the end of the process before export. This is a natural coffee, so it would have come to Addis Ababa already peeled out of the husk. But the other steps are very important to homogenize and improve the quality of the coffee and remove the defects. Then it's ready for roasting.